Nigeria, our motherland.
The source of our strength.
The root of our identity.
The bastion of our freedom.
Pride, honor,
and beliefs.
Happy Independence Day.
As Nigeria turns 63,
We can only hope to be knitted together, even tighter.
In brotherhood and unity.
May the labors of our heroes past never be in vain.
And may our labors for a great country,
where growth and love reign supreme, be rewarded.
Happy Independence Day, Nigeria.
Happy Independence Day, Nigeria.
From all of us at Tough Media Group, owners of Planet FM, Tanxio FM, and Spectrum TV.
Of course, we would say Happy Independence Day. It's still Independence Day celebrations. Good morning, Africa. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Akwa Ibom State. It's a beautiful Monday morning, the 2nd of October, and I'm greatly delighted to be here. My name is Uyai Anekan.
And I am Francis Oyumaedet. Happy Independence Day, Nigeria. Africa is celebrating you. The world over is celebrating you. And we do hope that, indeed, the labors of our heroes past shall not be in vain.
Great stories. I would say that great things are being said of Nigeria. At 63, we are making progress, no matter how we look at it. An evolving democracy, we would say. We've seen infrastructural developments across, all of these years that we have existed. But I think the conversation still borders around, are we a developed nation? Are we an underdeveloped nation? Are we a developing nation? These are some of the controversies that, we've been trying to establish in this particular season. But a lot of people are of the opinion that Nigeria is an underdeveloped nation, not even yet in the league of developing nations. A lot of indices will, give reason to these kinds of assertion by some quarter, while some other people want to pride themselves for developing as a developing nation. But then what will we say that we have really achieved in 63 years?
Well, the argument is going to go back and forth. 63 years. If you look at the life of a 63-year-old who has had his life well planned, well thought out, and has been very intentional, very deliberate, and committed to set goals, dreams, actualization of those dreams and goals, you definitely see a difference compared to the life of a 63-year-old who was just there doing absolutely nothing, or just, existing for existing sake. Place these two persons side by side, you see the level of growth, the level of advancement on one individual will be different from the level of growth advancement on the other individual. It's the same thing for Nigeria. As a country, how far have we gone compared to other nations of the world who probably came into existence like us? How far have we been able to transform our institutions? How far have we been able to stand out? How far have our leaders in years past been able to navigate the challenges, bring about the solutions that Nigeria need? Yes, of course, these questions are going to center around leadership, going to center around governance, going to center around the resources that we have and how they've been utilized. Of course, when it comes to resources, the generality of Nigerians and people outside the shores of Nigerians would always say, regardless of the abundance of mineral resources that we have in Nigeria, regardless of how blessed each and every state of the federation is in terms of natural resources, we've had a very big challenging situation with leaders, and as a result of these challenges with leaders, Nigeria has not really been able to maximize its full potential in terms of the resources, in terms of efficient use of resources, in terms of ensuring that these resources are used for the generality of the people. And that, of course, is a reason why we have the the number of millions of Nigerians who are living below poverty index. That's why we have the level of underdevelopment that we have in the respective states of the federation. That's why we have the number of out-of-school children that we have. It's like literally when disease burdens are mentioned, when certain indices and statistics are being given on the continent of Africa, Nigeria always will carry the first. That is if it is not carrying fares across the world. So it's a problem, it's a challenge, it's a situation that as we turn 63, as a country, we really need to sit down, watch those indices, look at those indices holistically. The leaders need to be sincere with themselves. I know that over time we've been having a back and forth with government and agencies who carry out, surveys and then reel out figures of what we have, for instance, out of school children. The government will always come out and say, yes, we know we have high number of out of school children, but these numbers are alarming. This is not the actual figure that we have. But of course, the government also will not be able to provide the other figures that is actually believable on the part of Nigerians when you look at what is happening on a day-to-day basis. So it's a time for pondering, it's a time for reflection. Yes, the federal government made it a low-key celebration, but beyond the low-key celebration, it's time for us to sit back, go back to the drawing board, look at where Nigeria ought to have been as the giant of Africa. I know a lot of people have mocked the country as priding itself as a giant of Africa, but when you place it side by side with other countries in Africa, it seems Nigeria has not been able to measure up, and that is the biggest challenge that is on the table for this present administration of Ahmed Bola Tinubu to try and resolve.
Well, there's a lot more conversation we are going to have with regards to Nigeria at 63. There's a lot of sectoral conversations to be had. Are we looking at education? Are we looking at the economy? How exactly is the Naira faring at this time? Why are we still back and forth? So, of course, stay tuned on Rise and Shine. That's what we are here to do. Like we always say, we are here to talk Nigeria. Please do take advantage of all our social media platforms, all of which you can find at SpectrumTV.ng. Let's have your concerns. Let's share your thoughts. Nigeria at 63 today, you are at home. Let's have the conversation. Let's see your thoughts. What ways do you think this nation can get more developed? But a quick rush through our flash stories for this Monday morning. Of course, we see the fact that the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had said all workers are to benefit from a provisional wage increase. And of course, we see that this provisional wage increase as announced by the President for all low-grade workers for 6 months is to cut across all cadre of workers in the country. Now, of course, we saw the President's Chief of Staff, Femi Gbajabiamila, reveal this to State House correspondents yesterday. Now, of course, there was a 4-hour meeting that ensued between the federal government and the organized labor representatives, and there was a lot of things to iron out with regards to this issue. Now, there is a promise of 25,000 naira increment for the next 6 months for all lower cadre workers in the country, but some responses coming out from that particular meeting also says that the organized labor actually rejected that offer of 25,000 naira. It's more like 25,000 naira is not enough to cushion the effect of the subsidy, former subsidy removal, because there's also a lot of conversation around this whole subsidy removal issue. But now there's now also even looking at the fact that the organized labor, TUC, NLC had said they're going to be embarking on a nationwide strike. Now this conversation has happened, deliberations have happened. 25,000 naira has been promised for the next 6 months for lower cadre workers in the Nigeria workforce. First question, after 6 months, what happens? 25,000 naira, is it actually enough to be able to cushion the effect of all that is happening in the country? Everything has soared, prices, everything has soared. But when we also see that the organized laborers have said 25,000 naira is not enough, are we going to say that we should just take this 25,000 naira first for starters whilst we continue to have negotiations with the federal government? So far so good. We have not even seen the impact of palliatives that have been released by the federal government. Most Nigerians would think that 25,000 naira is at least a mightily forward step, and maybe especially for lower cadre staff, this should be taken.
Especially for lower cadre staff? Well, I think if there are people in this country who really do need help, is the people on the lower cadre across board, whether they are in the civil service or they're not in the civil service. And now, what should that be? You're looking at cost of transportation, for instance, which is significantly high. So someone who used to pay 500 naira to work would now have to pay 1,500 naira, for instance. Somebody used to pay 300 naira to what would now have to pay 900 naira, for instance. So how do you measure 25,000 naira with, the reality of the situation on ground? I think the only way the Labour is going to allow this to slide is if the wager are further increased. Because it's one thing for you to announce a wager, is another thing for it to actually be substantive enough to address the challenges that have, that's being faced by Nigerian workers. I had a conversation with, the NLC chairman in Akwa Ibom State just yesterday, and he said Labour has not spoken and Labour has not come to agreement with what President Ahmed Bola Tinubu has said. And there is a meeting scheduled for Labour this morning at 10 a.m. where the decision is going to be made as to whether or not, the NLC, the TUC is going to embark on the planned nationwide strike and shutdown of all sectors of the Nigerian economy. But of course, most Nigerians just listening to the president's speech yesterday had said, it fell short of the expectations of Nigerians. For one, most Nigerians were expecting the president to roll out, sustainable palliative that will be able to address issues. Yes, the president mentioned that all hands are on deck to ensure the CNG buses are made available. But how long will Nigerians have to wait for those buses to arrive the respective states of the Federation? That's a big question the president hasn't answered. It would have been a different ballgame if the president had said, okay, in 1 week, in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, in a month, we're going to have these buses delivered across board to the respective states of the Federation and the FCT. But since the president just said, all hands are on deck, all hands can be on deck for the next 3 months. It can be on deck for the next 6 months, and we don't see these buses. So how do we now, place this side by side with the level of commitment on the part of the presidency and the part of the federal government to ensure that the people are well taken care of? So these are very big concerns that Nigerians have. These are big concerns that the NLC have. And the wager that has been announced by President Ahmed Bola Tinubu is just for the working class. What happens to people who are not within the employ of government? Of course, yes, Ahmed Bola Tinubu has also said the state governments are also being enjoined to ensure that they also do something for the civil servants in their state. But how many state governors will do that? And how long is it going to take for us to get to that decision on the part of the state government? So it's a lot of issues. I think we just take a pause and allow the president's speech come up a little bit, especially for those of us who must have missed it.
Dear compatriots, it is my unique honor to address you on this day. This is the 3rd anniversary of our nation's independence, both as the president of our dear country and simply as a fellow Nigerian. On this solemn yet hopeful day, let us commend our founding fathers and mothers. Without them, there would have been no modern Nigeria. From the fading embers of colonialism, their activism, dedication, and leadership gave life to the belief in Nigeria as a sovereign and independent nation. Let us, at this very moment, affirm that as Nigerians, we are all endowed with the sacred right and individual gifts that God has bestowed on us as a nation and as human beings. No one is greater or lesser than the other. The triumph that Nigeria has achieved shall define us. The travails we have endured shall strengthen us, and no other nation or power on this earth shall keep us from our rightful place and destiny. This nation belongs to you, dear people. Love and cherish it as your very own. Nigeria is yours. Nigeria is remarkable in its formation and essential character. We are a broad and dynamic blend of ethnic groups, religious, tradition, and cultures. Yet, our bonds are yet intangible, strong, invisible, yet universal. We are joined by a common thirst for peace and progress, by the common dream of our prosperity and harmony, and by the unified ideas of tolerance and justice, forging a nation based on the fair application of these noble principles to a diverse population has been a task of significant blessing, but also serious challenge. Some people have said an independent Nigeria should never have come into existence. Some have said that our country will be torn apart. They are forever mistaken. Here, our nation stands, and here we shall remain. This year, we passed a significant milestone in our journey to a better Nigeria by democratically electing a 7th consecutive civilian government. Nigeria has proven that commitment to democracy and the rule of law remains our guiding light. At my inauguration, I made important promises about how I will govern this nation. Among those promises were pledges to reshape and modernize our economy and to secure the lives, liberty, and property of the people. I said that bold reforms were necessary to place our nation on the path of prosperity and growth. On that occasion, I announced the end of the fuel subsidy. I am attuned to the hardship that have come. I have a heart that feels and eyes that see. I wish to explain to you why we must endure this trying moment. Those who sought to perpetuate the fuel subsidy and broken foreign exchange policies are people who will build their family mansion in the middle of a swamp. I am different. I'm not a man to erect our national home on a foundation of mud. To endure, our home must be constructed on safe and pleasant ground. Reform may be painful, but it is what greatness and the future require. We now carry the cost of reaching a future Nigeria where the abundance and fruit of the nation are fairly shared among all, not hoarded by a select and greedy few. A Nigeria where hunger, poverty, and hardship are pushed into the shadows and ever-fading past. There is no joy in seeing the people of this nation shoulder burdens that should have been shared years ago. I wish today's difficulties did not exist, but we must endure if we have to reach the good side of our future. My government is doing all that it can do to ease the load. I will now outline the path we are taking to relieve the stress on our families and households. We have embarked on a several sectoral reform to stabilize the economy, direct fiscal and monetary policy to fight inflation, encourage production, ensure the security of lives and property, and lend more support to the poor and the vulnerable. Based upon our talks with labor, business, and other stakeholders, we are introducing a provisional wage award increment to enhance the federal minimum wage without causing undue inflation. For the next 6 months, the average low-grade worker shall receive an additional 25,000 naira per month. To ensure better grassroots development, we set up an infrastructure support fund for states to invest in critical areas. States have already received funds to provide relief packages against the impact of rising food and other prices. Making the economy more robust by lowering transport costs shall be key. In this regard, we have opened a new chapter in public transportation through the development of cheaper, safer, compressed natural gas, CNG, buses across the nation. These buses will operate at a fraction of current fuel prices, positively affecting transport fare. The new CNG conversion kits will start coming in very soon, as all hands are on deck to fast-track the usual lengthy procurement process. We are also setting up training facilities and workshops across the nation to train and provide new opportunities for the transport operators and entrepreneurs. This is a groundbreaking moment where, as a nation, we embrace more efficient means to power our economy. In making this change, we also make history. I pledged a thorough house cleaning of the den of malvisions the CBN has become. That house cleaning is well underway. A new leadership for the central bank has been constituted. Also, the special investigator will soon present its findings on the past lapses and how to prevent similar recurrences. Henceforth, monetary policy shall be for the benefit of all and not the exclusive province of the powerful and wealthy. Wise tax policy is essential for the economic fairness and development. I have inaugurated a committee on tax reform to improve the efficiency of tax administration in the country and address fiscal policies that are unfair or hinder the business environment and slow our growth. To boost employment and urban incomes, we are providing investment funding for enterprises with greater potential. Similarly, we are increasing investment in micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. Commencing this month, the social safety net is being extended through the expansion of the cash transfer programs to an additional 15 million vulnerable households. My administration shall always accord the highest priority to the safety of the people. Inter-service collaboration and intelligence sharing have been enhanced. Our service chiefs have been tasked with the vital responsibility of rebuilding the capacity of our security services. Here, I salute and commend our gallant security forces for keeping us safe and securing our territorial integrity. Many have paid the ultimate sacrifice. We remember them today and their families. We shall equip our forces with the ways and means needed to perform their urgent task on behalf of the people. We shall, continue to make key appointments in line with the provision of Constitution and with fairness towards all men, women, youth, and physically challenged shall continue to be given due regard in these appointments. May I take this opportunity to congratulate the National Assembly for its role in the quick takeoff of this administration through the performance of its constitutional duties of confirmation and oversight. I similarly congratulate the judiciary as a pillar of democracy and fairness. I also thank members of our dynamic civil society organizations and labor unions for their dedication to Nigerian democracy. We may not always agree, but I value your advice and recommendations. You are my brothers and sisters, and you have my due respect. Fellow compatriots, the journey ahead will not be navigated by the fear or hatred. We can only achieve our better Nigeria through courage, compassion, commitment as one indivisible unit. I promise that I shall remain committed and serve faithfully. I also invite all to join this enterprise to make our beloved nation into its better self. We can do it. We must do it. We shall do it. I wish you all a happy 63rd Independence Anniversary. Thank you very much for listening. May God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria and bless all of you.
Of course, x-raying the speech, Independence Day speech of the president is one thing we're going to be doing on Rise and Shine this morning. He touched on several sectors, raised several issues. First on the table, which we were looking at, was the 25,000 naira increment, and part of the challenge is concerned with that particular 25,000 naira. First of all, it was more like for low income earning, but then Femi Gbajabiamila, who is his chief of staff, has come out to say that there are no low cadre or low income earning staff within the workforce. There is no low income, there's no medium income, no high. We are just workers in the system, and that everyone is going to get, the wage bill is going to favor all cadre of workers wherever we got the sects from. But of course, we see the fact that the labor union says 25,000 naira, we are not going to accept it. They're asking the federal government to increase it to 35,000 naira, and that it should continue until it is 2024 that they will be able to review the wages upwards. Right now it cannot be done. So the labor union is saying we cannot accept 25,000 naira. It's not enough. Spread 35,000 naira across all workers in the country and let it run beyond 6 months let it run from now till when salaries can be reviewed. That is the request on the table as of the moment.
Well, of course, 35,000, will it be enough? Might not be enough necessarily, but it's manageable as far as labor is concerned. If it's also cuts across all cadres of the civil service, it's also going to be understood. I mean, in as much as we know that some people earn a lot more than others, depending on the level, on the civil service hierarchy that you are on, you're definitely going to earn more than the other person. But having 35,000 across is definitely something that can help cushion the effect of the fuel subsidy. But most importantly, the decision or the stand of NLC is very critical at this point. But apart from the stand for the workers, Nigerians are also asking, in all of this that has been rolled out, what is in for the average Nigerian who is not under the employ of the government? What is there for the organized private sector who are Nigerians but are not also under the employ of the federal government or the state government? Remember when the palliative conversation came, we had different agitations coming from different quarters, different concerns, but there's always been that the organized private sector, who contributes as far as tax is concerned, as far as growing the revenue of this country is concerned, have not been looked into. So you're providing palliative, you're providing salary wager for the civil servant. What are you doing for the organized private sector? What are you doing to make sure that these people are also taken along and that you understand the plights that they're going through on a daily basis to run their businesses? So it's a whole lot of lacuna here and there that the federal government is not looking into. It's like literally what we are observing in some communities. People live in communities that are not from. When it's time to make contributions in those communities, they go to them. They make contributions. When it's time for community work, they go and they are part of the community work. But now it's time to distribute palliative. Everybody's now looking at, you are not from this community, go back to your community. And then you ask the question, when it's time to get for tax, federal government agencies are applying the deepest, the most interiors of road to go meet private organizations, corporate organizations to get taxes. But now that it's time for palliative distribution, nobody is taking into consideration the fact that these groups of persons have also contributed to the growth of the country. These groups of persons have also made sacrifices for the country. These group of persons also deserve to be taken along in the measure of things when it comes to palliative. They are Nigerians. They have contributed to the growth of the country, regardless of which sector they are in. So these are conversations, these are concerns that, Nigerians are hoping the NLC, the labor unions will put on the table. But of course, the consensus is, what are the organized private sector also doing? Why are they not asking the right questions? Why are they not putting forth their own demand before the federal government? Do we even have a convergence of all the stakeholders within the organized private sector? Do we have such a body in this country that will also say, okay, NLC is on it, TUC is on it, now this is the body representing the organized private sector, and we want the interests of Nigerian workers within the organized private sector who are also contributing to the growth of the country to be addressed. So these are things that we need to look at. But another concern that comes up from the president's speech, the highlight is that based on our talks with other stakeholders we are introducing, okay, that's the provisional wage. Where's the other one? Okay, this particular statement by the president said, we have embarked on several public sector reforms to stabilize the economy, direct fiscal and monetary policy to fight inflation, encourage production, ensure the security of lives and property, and lend more support to the poor and vulnerable. Now, this is a question Nigerians would argue differently. How much support are you giving to the vulnerable? Is it the 2 cups of rice that is being shared in the villages that some persons don't even see? Is that the measure you're taking to ensure that the vulnerable are being taken care of? When you're also talking about making sure that, security is guaranteed. In the last 2 weeks, 1 month, how many Nigerians have been kidnapped? How many has the federal government been able to secure their release? That's a question that we need to look into. Talking about monetary policies and inflation and all of that, we know that the CBN governor, the new CBN governor, has come out and ruled out reforms, what he hopes to do to make sure that, the Naira and the dollar are at par, or the Naira performs better than it is now. But how long are we going to watch to see those transformations coming in? How much time will Nigerians have to wait for those transformations to bring in the much desired change? And in the instance that we have to wait, what is the federal government going to do to wager these concerns? These are lots of questions on the part of Nigerians.
Well, lots of questions. We are going to keep asking these questions with regards to celebrating Nigeria at 63 and some of the things that the president called out in his speech. But still looking at how things, the soaring effects of inflation, high cost of living in the country, we see that there is a new price regime to hit the market from today, Monday, the 2nd of October, as we see the BUA group bring down the prices of cement from about 5,000 Naira to 3,500 Naira in the Nigerian market. I know it was about last week where it was rumored that the Dangote group had, slashed their prices of cement, but it looks like there was a little back and forth in that. But we see very strongly the BUA has, released a statement to the fact that yes, starting today, cement is going to be selling at 3,500 Naira. How does this affects the infrastructure sector. When we have cement coming down to 3,500, this is like a price that we used to hear a couple of years back, and this will really affect in terms of building infrastructure and several other projects, road infrastructure and all of that. At this time we're looking at up per 50 kilogram of cement. Now we are also going to look at how this price slash is going to affect other competitors in the market, because this first of all started on the heel of Dangote, that rumor about Dangote slashing their price, but now BUA has actually released a statement to the fact that this starts today for them all over the country.
Well, looking at the price reduction from BUA, it's definitely a step that will, help Nigerians. Remember, we're talking about housing deficit that is very alarming, and will take, according to the federal government comment, about 20 years for us to be able to meet that deficit. So if we have cement coming down to 3,500 naira, and it's actually implemented, because it's one thing for the company to announce, and let me just go through the official letter, reduction in price of BUA cement. I'll skip the first paragraph and to the second. As per the commitment made to reduction of prices and following a periodic review of operations for efficiency, the management of BUA Cement PLC wishes to announce and inform our esteemed customers, stakeholders, and the public, effective October 2nd, 2023, we have decided to bring the price reduction forward. As a result, BUA cement would now be sold at an ex-factory price of 3,500 naira per bag, so that Nigerians can begin to enjoy the benefits of the price reduction before the completion of our plan. Upon completion of the ongoing construction of a new plant, which would increase our production volume to 17 million metric tons per annum, BUA Cement PLC intends to review these prices further in line with our earlier pronouncement by the first quarter of 2024. And of course, they further went as far as saying that, they have spoken to all the dealers, there are people working within the downline, the supply chain, to ensure that in line with the new prices review, people from across are not extorted. Now, this is a comment coming from the BUA company. And one thing, is one thing for the announcement to come. Is another thing for us to see contractors, dealers in the cement industry following through. But I love the fact that they've noticed, so there is no way, because some of the concerns that dealers will now give is, okay, so what happens to us who are stocked, before now? What is going to be the outcome of us? How do we now, make the differences in the variation? We stocked at 5,000 or to sell at 5,000. Now you're telling us, 3,500 naira. Well, of course, the last quarter of that, resolved that. They noticed that all pending undelivered orders which have been paid for at the old prices will be reviewed downward to 3,500 in line with the new pricing from October 2nd. Of course, our licensed dealers are also enjoined to ensure that end users benefit from this reduction in ex-factory prices, as you will monitor fuel cells to ensure compliance. Now, that is the angle that Nigerians want to see. And for all Nigerians, especially people who have been, calculating how they're going to go about building, it's a great news.
Great news, I must say. Like you already said, implementation is something that is key. Once we see what the factory price is now, how will the dealers respond to this? You've raised a really big question for those that had already stopped. Now, it's different from when you say certain factories and certain dealers had placed orders at about 5,000, but you're going to deliver to them at 3,500. So it probably means you're going to increase the quantity of products that they're going to receive for the price that had been paid. What of those that this product had already been delivered to them? Not that they are expecting their goods to be delivered. They already had it stocked. What are they going to do? So maybe we are going to look at, we also might be looking at a window of implementation. Within the next 1 month, the BUA may be looking at the fact that, okay, those that had already stocked up, at 5,000 already have this in their stores. Within the next 1 month, sell it out, because we will not, get to see anyone selling BUA cement from a certain date at a certain price. Now, we need to see how this comes down, because we must actualize the fact that if this works, it is going to affect a lot of things in the country. We are going to see a certain level of stabilization for everyone who is into infrastructural development. And if cement comes down, is there likelihood that we are going to also begin to see other things with regards to building and infrastructure also come down? But BUA, this is, an absolutely incredible move, and let's also see how competing brands within the country will at this point try to also leverage on what's happening. And you know how market forces can be. Once one person has brought the prices down, everyone is going to begin to do this, and it's going to be really good. So this was a great move by the BUA. Of course, there's several commendations already that have already gone forth. I think Nigerians are the ones that will celebrate the most, especially those into development. But let's move on from that very story this morning. Of course, the president's speech also addressed the fact that the NLC TUC have planned to go on a nationwide strike, which is meant to start tomorrow. There's been several conversations with them so far, and part of the conversations we've had so far, some of the things that were reeled out, but is the president's speech, the paragraph in his speech that affects the NLC TUC, is it strong enough to actually make these labor union not to embark on strike? I know I was in conversation with certain people yesterday, and part of the things we were hearing is, for once, are we really going to see something happening? Because it's been more like it's been threats and threats. Oh, we are going to go, we are not going. You see the NLC or the TUC come out to say we are embarking on a strike. Then there is a conversation on the table. The strike war, is withdrawn, and it looks like every time we do this, there, it's that some people are perceiving it like the labor unions are not putting down their feet to demand certain things to be done. But then again, let's not forget that every time a nationwide strike does actually happen, we are literally stampeding the progress of the nation already when we are in dire situation. So is this paragraph in the president's speech good enough to actually make the NLC TUC step down from moving on with their proposed strike?
Of course, we cannot say until the NLC meeting and the decision is made open to Nigerians. But judging from the body language so far, they already stated the obvious fact that they're not satisfied with the move by the president, and that is a big concern. Now, do we need the NLC, the TUC, the Nigerian labor unions to stake their, put their best foot forward and ensure that they demand and collect from the federal government what is due for workers and what will be fair for the workers as well as fair in the government? Yes, they do have the right, they do have the backings of the law. But at this point in time, what is the way forward? It's going to take a lot of miracles for a strike to actually not happen, going by the body language of the NLC TUC at this point in time. But of course, part of the conversations that have been had over time since the NLC planned strike, from the 1st of September to the 2 days warning strike, to the issues between the NLC and the TUC, and the TUC coming out to tell Nigerians, look, even the reason the agreements we had with Lalong and the federal government, when we decided to, withdraw from the 2 days warning strike, has not been met. So when you look at the fact that the federal government literally just waits until there is another proposed strike announcement from the NLC, TUC before they take action, when you see that literally looks like the federal government will always resort, just last week, we had the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice coming out to threaten the NLC and the TUC again with the court order, of course, contempt of court and all of that. And this is literally like the federal government will wait, not taking any action on its part to ensure that the issues that were raised by NLC and the TUC are being addressed, and then wait for another strike to be announced, and then they dangle the state instrument, the instrumentality of the law, as the case may be, as a way of putting an end to whatever plans the NLC and the TUC had. But last week we saw the leadership of the NLC coming out to say they are ready to go to prison if it means that way for them to secure the rights of Nigerian workers. And if we go by that level of commitment and comments coming from the NLC and the TUC, we definitely would know that at this point they're not going to back down. But we do hope that President Ahmed Bola Tinubu declaring that his interest is to protect Nigerians, is to provide for Nigerians, is to make sure that, the vulnerable Nigerians are addressed and issues of concerns are addressed, that he's going to be able to meet labor halfway. 35,000 is not a bad idea, and the government of this country has it. I mean, if we have millions to give to our legislators, if we have millions to spend on other things, then we definitely should have millions to give to the Nigerians who are responsible for keeping the workforce going.
I think that's where the question of Nigerians are. It's been more like threats, or would I call it, NLC saying, oh, we are going to go, and then it's more like it never does actually happen. So it feels like there are most Nigerians saying, if you are going to go on this strike, just do it already. Let us see what the impact is going to be, or let's not keep hearing we are going, we are not going. And like we've rightly said, over time, it's more like it is every time the NLC says there is going to be a strike that we hear a new side effect to all of this. We now hear negotiations, promises, and all of that, but we see that it never really gets to fruition. So what is the TUC NLC really going to do tomorrow? Fingers crossed, across the country. Let's see, will the NLC TUC head on with the nationwide strike? And if yes, what kinds of results are expected from this nationwide move at this moment? Is it strong enough to get the federal government to look into the demands of the labor? And how is it going to affect the welfare of Nigerians at this time that everything is biting? But of course, these are strong issues, and you can take advantage of our social media platforms to let us know your thoughts with regards to some of these issues that are being raised. Is a nationwide strike even necessary at this time? Is it going to be adding salt to the already open sore injury of Nigerians at this time? Or do we really think that the labor union needs to move ahead with this strike, and let's see what the response of the federal government will actually be? But let's move on from that. The healthcare sector has been one that has been hit over several years. There's been brain drain, there's been all kinds of issues. There's also been the fact that infrastructure has been a really strong problem within that sector. But one thing that we also see that affects us in Nigeria are the laws and policies that govern different sectors. And we see an alarm being raised by the fact that within the laws of the healthcare sector, we see that there is no room made for auxiliary nurses within the system. And when we do not have auxiliary nurses within the system, we're also looking at how functionality is being affected. We are also going to be looking at the fact that how much hands do we even have as nurses in the country? I think I was looking at a certain statistics some time ago, and it showed us that the ratio of nurse patients in the country has actually drastically reduced. So we are not even looking at the fact that the doctor-patient ratio has reduced. We're also saying that we do not have enough hands of nurses in the country. But of course, we also see that they're saying that auxiliary nurses do not have any place within Nigeria's healthcare system and laws. Of course, legal experts and nursing medical professionals have insisted. Now they say that these nurses or midwives either registered by the Nursing and Midwifery Council of Nigeria, or the person is a quack. Now there's a warning going on for quackery in the country. Of course, this is actually a crime, and it also affects mortality rates that we have in the country. But what can we do? We're looking at licensing, how it's affecting having a lot more nurses in the system.
Well, I think I'll take our minds back to conversations we had here with the medical practitioner Regina Arskar some time back, when she posited that outside the shores of Nigeria, you have people who are doing residency, you have different cadres of nurses, different fields, and different training levels. And one thing that Nigeria definitely needs is to adopt some models. I know there have been pieces of information or conversations around the federal government planning to adopt the kind of mentoring system that the Igbos have when it comes to business, where you bring in people very much younger, and then you give them training for business for 7 years and then settle them. Those kinds of conversations have also been had around the different sectors of the Nigerian economy. Of course, the health sector is not left out. Now, one of the things Regina had posited was for us to be able to get, these people involved, interested. Most times when you look at nursing practitioners, when you look at even the nursing schools, in Akwa Ibom State, for instance, you hear on a daily basis when the nursing examination is being conducted. You have like 10,000 people coming out, 20,000 people coming out, and at the end of the examination, you find a very insignificant percentage of that being said to have passed the exams. But of course, when you come down to adopting a new strategy that allows these people to understudy while going about their normal duties, understudy the nursing profession, understudy the different classes, just going side by side with the nurses. First and foremost, it makes it easier for these people to get to learn while watching. And so when it's time for them to now go into taking the exams to actually get trained for the job, they must have already gathered the needed experience, the needed knowledge that makes it easier for them to get into school, get trained, get the license. And of course, these persons are not are not literally just going to jump on the job and then begin to act. I recall being in the Clement Isong Foundation when they did a reach out for training of midwiferys or trying to bring in those how do we call them, bird attendants, traditional bird attendants in the villages who attend to women who are pregnant, to bring them in and see how they can fuse a training between the traditional bird attendants and the trained nurses, the medical bird attendants in the hospital. Because most times what we are lacking is bridging the gap. There are persons who are naturally gifted. There are persons who have the talent to deal with these things, but they don't have the certification. They don't have the educational qualification. So what Nigeria needs to do, if we are to address this gap, is to bring in these people, bring in the experts who have the the certifications and all of that. Let them coexist together, share knowledge, train them more, and open the way for them to now gain the certification. Yes, we know that we cannot entrust the lives to quacks. It is very important that people who practice within the medical sector, and indeed all sectors, are professional. But for us to be able to get to where we are headed in terms of taking care of our health, we need to come to that common ground where the government understands that people can also be naturally gifted. So for us to change the status quo, bring in the naturally gifted persons, let them walk side by side with the professionals, and gain the knowledge shared, and eventually they get to pass through the rigorous process of being trained and then being licensed to practice. This is going to change the narrative, and this is going to take healthcare to the interior, the hinterlands.
Now, just to give perspective, to this particular issue before we land this, auxiliary nursing is about, having nursing assistants, patient care assistants, or nurse aides. Now, this person completes a brief healthcare training program and provides support services for resident nurses and doctors and all of that. Now, we are looking at how the whole death of Mobad and all of that is part of the reasons that this whole auxiliary nurse conversation is coming up. But these persons are like assistants within the healthcare system, not necessarily to give any medical care, but when a trained nurse is performing certain healthcare activities, the person who aids in the process are called auxiliaries. So we are looking at how we can have regulatory fixes that make sure that there is an organized system by which these things work. But basically, auxiliary nurses in Nigeria, their availability or not, are just regulatory challenges, and these are the things that we are looking at in the country. But we're just going to put a pause to that particular story, head on to the news brief desk where Mary Joseph is on standby. When we return, we are still talking Nigeria at 63, several things to look into. Do stay with us. Rise and Shine continues.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Nigeria, our motherland.
The source of our strength.
The root of our identity.
The bastion of our freedom.
Pride,
Honor.
And beliefs.
Happy Independence Day.
As Nigeria turns 63,
We can only hope to be knitted together, even tighter.
In brotherhood and unity.
May the labors of our heroes past never be in vain.
and may our labors for a great country
Where growth and love reign supreme, be rewarded.
Happy Independence Day, Nigeria.
Happy Independence Day, Nigeria.
From all of us at Tough Media Group, owners of Planet FM, Tanxio FM, and Spectrum TV.
government, Secretary General, delegates.
Voting for Spectrum TV to recover for the lapses in still counting.
As of government, Secretary General, delegates.
Voting for Spectrum TV to recover for the lapses in still counting.
A very good morning to you and welcome to your morning news brief on Spectrum, live from Uyo. I am Mary Joseph. We begin the news brief with the report that President Bola Tinubu has extended the 25,000 naira wage increment to all levels of workers in the civil service. This was disclosed by the Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila. Gbajabiamila said the 25,000 naira earlier announced by President Bola Tinubu for low-grade federal workers as intervention would now cut across all levels of workers. On labour matters, the federal government has met with leadership of the Nigerian Labour Congress and Trade Union Congress on measures to address the dispute arising from the removal of subsidy on premium motor spirits known as petrol. Rising from the meeting, the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, in a statement said part of the resolution reached during the meeting was that Labour Union would consider the Apex government offers. Away from that, Uyo Senatorial District Media Practitioners Forum have called on those beating drums of war over the Traditional Rulers Council law to discontinue, stressing that the ongoing free verse narrative on the law is assuming dangerous and divisive dimensions. A statement by the Uyo Senatorial District Media Practitioners Forum and made available to newsmen noted that it wished to state their position on the matter and to remind citizens that the Akwa Ibom is one and that there is nothing that is worth the peace and unity of the state. They however noted that in any case, they said Akwa Ibom State Traditional Rulers Council law is neither out of place nor obnoxious as alleged blackmailers have painted it to be. We head straight now to the foreign scene where Indian Sun's monitoring spacecraft has crossed a landmark point on its journey to escape the sphere of Earth's influence days after the disappointment of its moon rover failing to awaken. The Aditya L1 mission, which started its 4-month journey towards the center of the solar system on September 2nd, carries instruments to observe the sun's outermost layers. And finally in sports, Rivers United are through to the group stage of the CAF Confederation Cup after beating Etelo Falante of Burkina Faso 2-0 at the Adoki Stadium, Port Harcourt. Both teams battled to a 0-0 draw in the first leg 2 weeks ago. Rivers United won the second qualifying fixture 2-0 on aggregate. Reports say that the Port Harcourt club are the only Nigerian club who have reached the mini-league round of the continental competition this year after Yimba, Remo Stars and Bende Insurance failed to do so. We have details of this and many more in our news at 12. I am Mary Joseph. Let's head back to Horizon Channel where we have Francis and Uyai on standby. Do have a wonderful morning.
Secretary General, delegates.
Voting for Spectrum TV to recover for the lapses in still counting.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
only ones allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigeria Police Force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but you can't be talking about cases which are in court.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
I'd like to welcome you back as still the Rise and Shine, the very first in the month of October 2023, coming to you live on Spectrum TV. And we're broadcasting live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State. Happy Independence Day. Yes, we're talking Nigeria, issues surrounding the president's first speech to Nigeria as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria on an Independence Day, you know, triggering a lot of reactions from Nigeria. That's part of us talking Nigeria this morning. Of course, we also touch light on other issues. The BUA cement group reducing the price of cement to 3,500 and what that would mean for the infrastructural sector of Nigeria, and particularly persons who have been planning and, you know, breaking their head out on how to go about, you know, getting the needed cement to work. Of course, we also touch on the issue of health, where there have been a protest by the nursing professionals in Nigeria saying there is no place for quacks. of course, we have to balance that by, also looking at the fact that the legislations guarding the practice of nursing in Nigeria needs a lot of upgrading and needs a lot of work for us to be able to meet up with the patients, nurses ratio, which of course is abysmally poor, just like we have the one in the doctors. But of course, this is Talking Nigeria, and we're going to head straight into a first conversation with a guest. We're talking with Mr. Harry Udo, who is the chairman, civil society organizations in Akwa Ibom State and a human rights activist. Good morning, Harry. Welcome to Rise and Shine. Happy Independence Day. You have, as a Nigerian, as far as the fuel subsidy removal is concerned.
Well, I didn't quite hear you there. I just heard, does it address my concerns? And I suppose you are talking about the president's speech.
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, it doesn't quite address the concerns. I think the president was a bit
organization's perspective, one of whom Harry Udo sits on as chairman, and there's a lot they expect from the government at this time. And when the CNG conversations have been on as long as the president has been president in the last couple of months, it at the beginning it sounded like, oh, the CNG was going to arrive almost immediately, but several months have gone down. And I remember one of the questions you raised this morning, Francis, was that are these just mere words, promises once again, or can we achieve this anytime soon? We are looking at how we can convert power and conserve power within the economy for it to work for most Nigerians at this time. And I know that something else that the president had also raised, he talked about monetary policies. One thing that we know that has affected us as a country in the last 1 year, as some of the fiscal policies and monetary policies that were reeled out by the former governor of the CBN, Godwin Emefiele, and how it affected Nigeria. We have Harry Udo back, and we are just going to get his thoughts on the president's speech and how it stands on its end. Go ahead.
Thank you, Yai. So I was saying before the break that well, it was a mixture for me from the president's speech. For our Independence Day speech, you want to rally Nigerians and reflect, on the building blocks of the founding fathers of Nigeria and the things they agitated for, and the independence they got, and give Nigeria the sovereignty to determine their future. And then how far we have gone, and looking at the failures of the past and projecting to what should be the solution going forward, and giving hope to Nigerians for the future. But it turns out that the president's speech was a mixture of reeling out his achievements so far within the short span of time that he has been in government, and then, of course, attempt.
I think the network interference is really, really something. We would like to try an alternative this morning. Make an audio conversation, of course, with Mr. Harry. Try and still navigate the issues that we need to iron out this morning. If anything, Nigerians are still divided on the part of what actions and what decisions to take when it comes to the president's speech yesterday. But of course, before then, we were told that when the president speaks to Nigerians yesterday, and that was as a Saturday, that is going to resolve a lot of issues, particularly the one that concerns the nationwide strike. And many economic experts and analysts have said, if NLC, TUC, if Nigeria gets to a point where there's a total lockdown and shutdown of activities across board, it's not going to speak well for the country. When we look at the economic place that we are in, when we look at, the cost of living, when we look at inflation. I know one of the questions that Nigerian asked us last week was when Labour said, this planned nationwide strike is going to happen, so stock up your house in preparations for it for as long as it's going to last. And then Nigerians ask, where do we get the money to stock up our houses in preparation for, the planned nationwide strike? And then, of course, there were also concerns. You're asking for Nigerians to stock up their house. Let's even start from your members. The month hadn't yet ended. And of course, we know there are sometimes within the federal government, you get to be paid a week into the new month. Other times, the payment comes early. So what happens? What if the federal government decides to, delay intentionally, deliberately payment for the month of September, and then you're expecting your staff, your members to go into, striking without taking home, their September salary and being able to use that to even buy a few things. And when you're talking about buying a few things, let's not forget also that school is resumed and many people have had to pay, school fees.
Yeah.
I think we have Harry back. Hello, Harry, welcome back.
Yes, I'm back. Thank you.
So sorry.
The network is a little bit worrisome.
All right, let's go ahead.
Okay, so I don't know how much of the things I said you got. I was saying that the president's speech, fine as it were, fell short of expectations, really. It was a mixture of reading out his achievements within the short span of time. I'm wondering whether we can talk about achievements at this time. And then also attempting to gloss over what should have been the main focus of the Independence Day speech, which I think would have been to articulate the struggles of Nigeria thus far and to give hope to the citizenry. But leaving that and going to some of the things that he had said, I'm seeing he talked about extending the social safety net program to 15 more million households. And I was saying that looks a bit nebulous for me because already the social register on which the social safety net program of the federal government of the last administration were into, it's contested by the federal government themselves, different agencies of the federal government contesting that social register. And as we speak, that social register is being looked into and reviewed. And so on which, frame are you now adding the 15 million more households? While the social safety net program has been a veritable source for as palliative to help push people I was expecting the
Mr. Harry, are you with us? Okay, I think we lost connection there again. Quite an unfortunate, morning it is. Unfortunately, network just seems to interfere today. But of course, just speaking from what Harry has said, that he seems not satisfied, with the comment made by President Ahmed Bola Tinubu in his speech to Nigerians, especially when you look at the program that he has promised to roll out. I think if there's anything to go by, this further gives credence to the reactions from Nigerians. Nigerians had expected a lot from President Ahmed Bola Tinubu's, Independence Day speech. And just like he stated in the Independence Day speech that, he had to take the bold step of putting an end to fuel subsidy in his inaugural speech, Nigerians also expected he's going to take a bold step finally to address the fallout, to address the concerns, the hardship that has been occasioned by the removal of fuel subsidy. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. And that is where Nigerians are divided. And a lot of persons are possibly thinking we might be heading for the worst situation.
Well, there's a lot more questions to ask. Like Harry has said this morning, is this really a time to reel out accolades of things that he has accomplished in the last 100 days plus? Is it really strong enough? But we have Harry back on the line, and he's saying some really, really strong things this morning. I would just like for him to put his thoughts to rest. Harry, are you able to hear us this morning?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, please go ahead. We apologize for the inconveniences.
it's not your fault. It's still the issue with Nigeria, especially in this time where technology is everything, and we don't seem to get it right there. Anyway, so I'm talking about the social safety net program in the president's speech and some of the other promises. And in the president's speech, I would have expected that the president would be a little bit more specific on the things he was going to do. The issue of sharing money. He talked about intervention in the micro and small enterprise sector, as well as looking at cottage industries to see how he can support them. A good thing, and one of the things that Labour is asking is exactly how you are going to do that. I mean, these are promises, and this promise was made a long time ago at the beginning of the issues around fuel subsidy removal. But up till this moment, there's still no clear strategy on how the president intends the federal government to support micro and small enterprises, as well as medium enterprises within the country. So for me, it's still a matter of Georgia again. Talk without much traction. I would have expected the president to be a little bit more specific, direct, and concrete around the resuscitation of our refineries until we are able to produce fuel in this country. We will continue to suffer the issue of subsidy or no subsidy. As we speak, the government has gone again to begin to subsidize fuel import at 620 naira. We're still talking about subsidy. I mean, it's I'm sorry to say, it was really, really worrisome. It's a bit crazy to have this kind of economy. And to have the president's speech not really addressing these things specifically and directly.
I want us to, dwell on that subsidy matter a little bit, because it looks like it's been back and forth speculations. Oh, has the subsidy really been removed, or what is the federal government doing? It's been like speculations, but it looks like you have like detail with regards to that, because the problem is, if you are still subsidizing petrol at that price, 600 plus, what then is going to happen to the general market? Are there expectations for this to fall? Or are you still subsidizing for us to buy petrol at the price that we currently are buying it? What's the hope?
It's a worry, It's a huge worry. It's because during the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, the then Minister for State for Petroleum declared that subsidy was over, that they removed subsidy completely. Mm-hmm. And then the price of fuel was jacked up at that time. Now you consider that the only people importing fuel is the NNPC. And then there is the oil for petrol deal that they've had with a couple of countries and companies in those countries. And so if we are giving our crude oil to receive, petrol from those countries, what are you subsidizing? Is it the shipping? What exactly are you subsidizing? So there's a whole lot of darkness around this, and that is what I expected this government to look at. There are those who feel that every successive government, looks to use subsidy to fund elections and to fund other evil activities that they do. So they have the slush fund from this subsidy thing, which is the government stealing from its own self, to do whatever they want to do. And that's where the worry is. Because if you are engaged in oil swap, I'm surprised that the president has not asked for an account. I mean, he's done a great job asking a private investigator to investigate the central bank. I'm surprised that the president has not asked that NNPC be investigated. I'm surprised that the federal government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has not asked a private investigator, to investigate the oil swap deal, has not asked a private investigator to investigate the subsidy scam that he himself has called a scam during the time of President, Goodluck Jonathan. So I'm surprised he's not asked those. He's just asked only for CBN. Why is that? I want to tell you categorically that there is nothing being subsidized. There are people who are trying to recover, election funds, the money they spent, and that's why you have this subsidy thing. There is nothing being subsidized. The NNPC should tell us what it costs to do the oil swap. I mean, look at recently just discovered that they only use the money for themselves. That's the NNPC. Don't forget the cheap oil debacle, where the same NNPC are taking our oil away and selling it for themselves. The directors and certain persons in Aso Rock.
A nation's evolving, especially since we have decided to subscribe to democracy as our system of governance. But at this point, what kinds of precedents we need to set on ground? President Tinubu has given his first speech, but like he said, greatly disappointing for a lot of persons in the country at this time. But what do you really think we can do before we reach 60?
So number one thing is for the citizens to wake up, all right, and be able to decide the kind of leadership that they want. That's one. Number two, I think if President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who at the moment doesn't even have a refinery, the Warri refinery, which is easy to get crude oil to, before you begin to think about the pipelines that will now ferry the oil to Kaduna. If these two refineries are working, optimally, by the way, those refineries have never been in optimal use. So it seems like there are certain persons who do not want this to happen. I mean, look at what is happening with the Dangote refinery. Dangote is saying the federal government with whom they had a pact, the refinery that the federal government invested billions in, have refused to give crude oil to Dangote refinery. So Dangote refinery will now need to buy crude oil. If you have made investment of billions of dollars in that refinery, I would think that what I want to do is to ensure that the refinery is running well. So it now goes to fuel and to authenticate what many people thought that investment was money laundering, that the federal government did, investing an amount more than the total cost of building a new refinery in somebody's refinery. And now they are refusing to sell crude oil to them. So there's a lot wrong. What we need to do is to get the right kind of leadership.
Now,
the current leadership cannot bring about Uhuru for Nigeria. I cannot give the hope that Nigerians direly need right now. The Nigerians need their hope to be boosted.
All right.
There's a huge hopelessness in the country right now, and we just need that change.
Okay, so in the speech of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu yesterday, he also made mention of the fact that if there is anything he intends to do is to make sure that Nigeria runs smoothly, economically and investment-wise, to make sure everything works in the interest of Nigerians. Now, looking at the scenario playing out with the Dangote refinery, the Ministry of Petroleum is under the purview of the president, just like we saw former President Muhammadu Buhari did. Now Ahmed Bola Tinubu is in charge. What do you think must be done to show that the federal government, because like you've stated, if the federal government invested that much into Dangote refinery, it should be expected that all the other logistical arrangement provisions to make sure that there is crude oil provided for refining and all of that, without it necessarily have to go outside the country and then being imported back for production by Dangote. That, how do you suggest the federal government remedy these?
I mean, it's very simple. I mean, the solution is in the things that you have just said. Because if I had invested billions in a business, I would want to have my eye there to know exactly what is happening. And if I can help to ensure that the company is running properly, that's what I would do. So it's a bit shocking that you will hear the NNPC saying we are not going to give fuel to crude oil to Dangote refinery because certain parts of the refinery aren't complete. I think you should be asking questions. Why are these parts not complete? This is a refinery that was commissioned, early in the year and said it was going to produce oil. And some of us, I was in that studio saying that that's not going to happen until 2024. So don't you see that it would seem that some game is being played, to hoodwink Nigerians? All right. So for me, what should have been done is for the federal government to look at exactly what are the challenges and have to tighten the knot. If they at this point, because they need refineries in Nigeria to be operational. All right. Look, there are those who are even saying NNPC shouldn't sell crude oil to Dangote refinery, at the market price. All right. It just sell crude oil to Dangote refinery at the barest minimum price, because it's producing, for Nigerians' consumption. Until it gets to the point where Nigerians have enough fuel, then you begin to look at exportation. That's when you can now say, Dangote refinery, we're going to sell to you at market price because you're going to be exporting. All right. So those are the things that we need to look at. Why is the federal government not looking at that? I mean, ask yourself, Francis Anoyai, why is the federal government, why is the President Bola Tinubu not talking about refineries in Nigeria? What about the $1 billion or 2.5 that was earmarked in the President Buhari's administration for the turnaround maintenance of refineries? And they said it was going to be ready in December 2022. But up to this moment, nothing has happened.
All right,
so why is the president not looking at that?
No, just to pause you, Harry, the president, Ahmed Bola Tinubu, did also promise that the Port Harcourt refinery is going to work to be operational by December. Now, we are seeing a part of a lack of commitment, rather, on the part of the federal government to provide oil or crude for Dangote. Do you in any way think that is also going to play out within, the landscape of the Port Harcourt refinery that President Ahmed Bola Tinubu said was going to be fully operational by December? Should Nigerians be worried that we might be having another excuse coming up?
Yes, I think we'll be having another excuse coming up, because I expected to hear that very clearly and loudly in the President's Independence Day speech when he was making promises of interventions that he wants to make. All right. In the discussion with the NLC, as you would see, refinery is not it there. He's talking about increasing salary of low earners, low income earners, of the federal government to 35,000. But he hasn't said anything for those who are not employed by government, like you and I. All right. Nothing has been said. For the many people at the bottom of the pyramid, those micro traders, they say we will lift up micro and small entrepreneurs, and we'll support them, we'll make provisions. Exactly how? What are you going to do? Do you even have a census, of the micro and small enterprises in the country? How are you going to reach out to them? So these are vacuous promises that the president has made. So I think that on the matter of refinery, when December comes, he's going to be silent on it and just move on to other things. Because I expected to hear that very clearly in the Independence Day speech, and also in the conversation with Labour, talking with them to call us strike. So there seems to be some kind of orchestration to ensure that we don't produce fuel in Nigeria. This is the only country in the world that produces oil and imports petrol. Who does that? We are even talking about producing, our agri products, that we should valorize it. We should add value to it. We should process our raw materials here instead of exporting our cocoa and importing beverage drinks. We should process our cocoa instead of exporting our palm oil and getting other products. We should use our palm oil, to produce other products here. Those things we are not doing. I expect when the president talked about renewed hope, I had expected that these are the kinds of things that he'll be looking at, that will move from consumption to production. Right now, we're a massive consuming nation. We import everything, all right, even down to toothpicks. That's horrible. Even down to the little plastics that we do. We are getting all those things from China, the hand fans and all of those things. We are producing nothing. How can the economy grow? So when you talk about sharing money to 15 million other families, it's a shame that, for someone who's been touted, to be a miracle worker, and who's done this and that for Lagos, I'm surprised that he's not looking at that. For someone who knows how to pick the right kinds of people.
Harry, don't we think that 100+ days is, a little too small for us to be able to say that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will be able to deliver on renewed hope? He has 4 years to deliver on the mandate of the renewed hope, and it's more like we shouldn't put the weight of the failure of Nigeria in the past 62 years on him in this 63rd year. But then just before you respond to that, something else we also want to look into, because you raised some concerns also, is the impact of injustice and insecurity on national development. In recent weeks, if across the nation, insecurity is on the rise. Armed robbery has become a thing, and most roads are not even good enough for people to ply on because of the spate of insecurity, and this is also undermining development. When foreign investors hear how polarized our systems are, will they really want to come into the country and make investments? These things are also affecting the quality of development that we have in the country.
Thank you. To answer to the first, 100 days, even a year, may look a bit too short, too soon to appraise may seem too short, too soon to appraise, the outcome of the government. But my father used to tell me in our local dialect, "Eto aburi niem free," would that the tree that will bear fruit is known from the shoots. All right. So when you look at the things that has happened, the way and manner that the president has gone about in this current federal government, you'll be a bit worried when you understand, when you look at trends, of past governments and look at the trend here, it might be saying deja vu. I've seen this before. All right. And so you really know that thing really is going to happen. There is a level of insincerity, and lip service that is happening around this administration that tells you, and you've seen it before in previous administration, Buhari came in touting, fighting corruption and all kinds of stuff, and suddenly we are discovering that the administration, which was touted and which the Buhari administration sang for years on end to the end of the administration, the Buhari administration became even more corrupt. Jonathan's administration became like child's play. And so you are seeing the same thing happening again, right now. And so with that, you can project and say, look, even in 8 years, if this administration remains, nothing much is going to happen. First of all, is fighting, a legitimacy problem, that cast a cloud over this administration and will hamper everything that they're doing. Now, coming to the issue of security and injustice, and its impact on the economy and indeed policy, it goes without saying, that where there is injustice, there cannot be progress. And then, of course, the insecurity situation in the country, we look at different parts of the country, you have that happening. And especially the kind of insecurity that seems to be orchestrated, done in the Northeast so that the mineral resources in the Northeast can be mined by certain persons, done in the Northwest so that the gold and all the other minerals in the Northwest will be mined. And so the federal government doesn't have the benefit from it. Rather, individuals, part of them in the federal government, are benefiting from the mining of those minerals there. That's the reason why you have insecurity in those places. Insecurity in the Southeast is political, orchestrated, to keep the Southeast down. That's what it is. And no nation looking for foreign direct investment would allow these things to fester. All right? Will allow a situation where the rule of law is not respected, where there is injustice, and where there is insecurity. And you're talking about foreign direct investment. Who's going to come to your country? Where are they going to live? All right? The other day, a young woman was thrown out of a vehicle, and she died. All right? There's a whole lot of criminality going in Abuja for that matter. You'd expect that Abuja would be secure. I was in Abuja the other time. I met a young lady, and she showed me stab wounds. She was stabbed in the both vehicle that she took. This person stabbed her on the leg and on the hand. All right? she was lucky to be rescued and the man arrested. So you would think that what are we doing with our security personnel? How well have we deployed them and how are we using them? How are we fighting insecurity, within the nation and criminality? So when we don't have that, you cannot have a smooth running economy as the president has promised. You cannot have things going right. You cannot have agriculture going on, and that's the mainstay. Agriculture can feed this nation. But right now, we're not farming optimally. The farming belt is the middle belt, all right? Benue State, and then you have Taraba in the northeast, and of course, Benue itself is a farming region, and they're not farming as much. In fact, the whole of the northern region, and some parts of the northwest, they farm, all right? But right now, you have these problems there, and they cannot cultivate anything. Animal, not just animal husbandry. It's in the northeast and in the northwest. That is not happening. Cattle rustling is discouraging that profession. And so, with all this happening, how can a nation grow? I would have thought that the president should focus on ensuring that insecurity in different parts of the nation is quelled. Empower the military to be able to do the things that they are doing. Rather than the audio we hear, we are buying helicopters for the military, and yet they are flying about with obsolete machines that collapse at the slightest notch. These are things that we need to look at. So if we want this country, as we are celebrating our independence, where there is really nothing to celebrate right now, so as we talk about our independence, as we reflect on Nigeria becoming a sovereign nation, I need to look at that. Yeah, I overheard you when the network was bad, saying that nations that got independence at the same time with Nigeria.
Yeah.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Is one of those nations. I will tell you that Singapore is one of those nations, and there are a lot of other, seeming third world countries that got their independence either before Nigeria, slightly after Nigeria, or around about the time Nigeria got their independence. And look at that. Nigeria in 1965 was a lot better than South Korea. Singapore couldn't compare to Nigeria in 1965, 5 years after Nigeria had gotten independence. But look where Singapore is today. It took leadership to bring Singapore there. It took leadership to ensure that South Korea is what it is. Look at Malaysia. Can we compare with those nations? Look at Indonesia. These were colonized nations as well. Look at India. India was a colonized nation. In fact, hordes of Indians, in the bid to colonize India.
All right. Thank you so much, Harry. I think we have to let you go for want of time, but we truly appreciate you taking the time to be with us this morning, talking about Nigeria and analyzing President Ahmed Bola Tinubu's speech. But within the short period that we have here, I think we'll just briefly run through a daily spotlight, just take you through the major stories on the front pages of national dailies. Well, on Daily Spotlight, we'll be looking at the front page of the Vanguard newspaper this morning as a start of. The kicker that says 24 hours to nationwide strike. Federal government's meeting with NLC. TUC ends in deadlock. Of course, the rider says Labour rejects government offers. Meeting reconvened today. Orders state council affiliates to ensure total compliance. Set up zonal strike coordinating committee. Federal government offers 25,000 wage awards across board. Still on the front page of the Vanguard this morning, you find U.S. court orders CSU to release Tinubu's academic records to Atiku. Nigeria 63 governors scan orders preach peace, says country challenges surmountable. We can move against Okada operations, open grazing in Abuja. Those are the major stories you find on the front page of the Vanguard this morning. The last being devaluation, banks raking 1.9 trillion forex profit. Those are the major stories on Vanguard this morning.
Moving from the Vanguard newspaper this morning, let's look at Nigerian Tribune. Federal government changes gear, says 35,000 naira now for all its workers to waive VAT on diesel for 6 months. to pay 75,000 naira to 15 million households at 35,000 naira per month from October through December. Sanwo-Olu pledges to resolve RTEN NURTW crisis in Lagos. Labour to meet federal government today after consultations with members. We also have here Ondo impeachment saga set for Akeredolu's new deputy begins. Of course, we are seeing this. It has spiraled from Edo State now and gotten into Ondo State. We also see here court orders Chicago University to release Tinubu's academic records to Tinubu, to Atiku, I beg your pardon. As we can well see, we've seen more classmates coming up on the scene for the president. But this is the much we can take. Customs arrest shipping agent who plan to export elephant ivories and pangolin scales and others. There's a lot happening in Nigeria. You'd want to pick up our national dailies to see what's happening in the country. Let's keep abreast, but we'll continue to talk Nigeria. This is the week of our independence, and the conversation continues nationwide. We'd love for you to continue with all of this across our social media platforms, all of which you can find at SpectrumTV.ng. Nigeria is ours. Let's use our conversation to build the narrative of what we expect as we journey to 64.
Of course, it is a lot of expectation on the part of Nigerians that the leadership of this country, from Ahmed Bola Tinubu, begins to be very sincere, transparent, accountable, just and fair in its dealings with Nigerians across the board, so that the issues that have bedeviled the country can be addressed holistically. We need to stop politicizing everything, especially things that has to do with security of lives and property, that has to do with development and advancement of the country. When that is done, then of course we will be ready to take our place in the Committee of Nations.
Well, that's the much we can take on Monday. Rise and shine, October 2nd. Talking independence, I would like to say happy Independence Nigeria once again. My name is Uya Anek, and thanks for being a part of today's broadcast. Until we return to your screens tomorrow, stay blessed, Nigeria.
And I am Francis Oyemadet. Happy Independence Day, Nigeria. Continue to contribute your quota. God bless you.